Bobby Lee. Introduction. Bobby Lee, who aptly described himself as a koi fish farmer in his Twitter bio, is a Korean-American stand-up comedian famously known for his portrayal of stereotypical Asian characters in the American sketch comedy TV show Mad TV from 2001 to 2009. His comedy style spans different genres like black comedy, observational comedy, and ribaldry. He's known for making lewd jokes about, and sometimes at the expense of, his small yet robust frame. His usual antics consist of him running around naked and cross-dressing while making inappropriate yet self-conscious jokes. He's also gained spotlight from his satirical impressions of famous people like Kim Jong-il, Jackie Chan, and Connie Chung. One of his most notable parodies is the North Korean scientist propaganda bit, where he portrayed a North Korean scientist randomly pushing buttons while smiling awkwardly at the camera.
What are you doing, Joe? Joe, you are a scientist. This is what you do. You never push the buttons like that.
Sometimes I do.
No, you don't. I see you at work all the time.
Despite the director's orders to act natural. Post Mad TV, he's co-starred in various sitcoms and films like Pineapple Express and The Dictator. He is currently a co-host of the podcast Tiger Belly along with his girlfriend, TV personality Kaola Kun, and the podcast Bad Friends with the American stand-up comedian Andrew Santino. Childhood. Bobby Lee, whose birth name is Robert Lee Jr., was born on September 17, 1971, to clothing shop owners Robert and Jeannie Lee and grew up in Poway, California. He has a younger brother named Steve, who grew up to be a musical artist professionally known as Kwangu and sometimes does podcasts with Bobby. Described as an unruly and raucous kid, his formative years were spent at Painted Rock Elementary and Twin Peaks Middle School. It was also noted that his traditional-minded parents expected him to inherit their clothing shop business, but the young Bobby was more interested in peddling laughs from customers. "You must be ashamed of your son," were the words that his mom would often hear from the close-knit Korean community in San Diego. Bobby attended Poway High School and was known to have every Run DMC and Beastie Boys tape. He was a member of his school's breakdancing group, which he briefly mentioned at an interview for his film Kickin' It Old School, a comedy about breakdancers. Despite his breakdancing background in high school, he ended up hiring a body double to do his breakdancing scenes. Drug addiction. Bobby had a history of drug addiction and admitted he had a difficult childhood and relationship with his parents because of it. At ages 12 and 15, he was taking recreational drugs like methamphetamine, heroin, and marijuana. It took him 3 attempts to successfully rehabilitate and become sober at 17 years old. Unfortunately, his first 2 years in Mad TV made him relapse. This time, he took Vicodin, marking the end of a 12-year sobriety run. It took some convincing by the show producers to get him to be sober again. After his father's death from Parkinson's disease, he relapsed again and went to rehab. He's been sober ever since. Early career. He moved out at 18 years, attending Palomar College and taking various jobs at restaurants and coffee shops, mainly in the San Diego area. Funnily enough, his pursuit of comedy started in an accident. In 1994, the coffee shop he was working on was abruptly closed. "I just went next door to get a job," Bobby blurted at a face-to-face interview in 2009. The next few months were him working odd jobs at the comedy club, until one day, he decided to do stand-up comedy on one of their amateur nights. His first time on the stage was a bust. "It was awful," he declared. "I think I showed them my butt and made some noises and went off stage. It was embarrassing." It was after a year when he finally got a real shot at being an actual comedian. He met someone who could jumpstart his career. It was American actor and comedian Pauly Shore himself and the Honduran-born comedian Carlos Mencia who saw talent in the young Bobby and hired him. Bobby noted that Pauly had opened mic at the comedy club at one point and saw talent in him. 2 weeks later, he asked Bobby to come with him to Vegas. Bobby was flabbergasted when his first big performance was in front of 25 people, when he wasn't even used to performing in front of 20. Despite his budding career, his relationship with his parents dwindled with his refusal to take over the family business, stating that his parents barely spoke to him in the first few years of his comedy career. After a few more stand-up appearances, his father had a change of heart and attended one of his performances, apologizing for not having attended sooner. Since then, his parents, especially his father, finally became supportive of his comedic pursuits. Mad TV career. Bobby was then hired in 2001 by comedy TV show Mad TV. but the initial reception of him was negative due to his inexperience as an actor as the show was being produced in front of a live audience. He'd once declared in an interview that his first 2 years in the show were the worst 2 years of his life. Due to performance anxiety, Bobby eventually turned to drugs again, this time taking Vicodin. He was devastated and in a downward spiral, and was using drugs as a coping mechanism. As time went on, the producers noticed how drugs were affecting Bobby and gave him an ultimatum: stop doing drugs or get fired. Bobby finally realized it was time to get sober. Bobby also hated some of his roles in the TV show. Being the only Asian in the cast, all the good and bad Asian roles were consigned to him. I dreaded doing Connie Chung, he said. I sort of dreaded doing those average Asian skits. Early on, I hated those things. Despite his dread for the roles, Bobby still needed to play Asian characters. A few of his most memorable roles aside from Connie Chung were Kim Jong-il, Tank, George Takei, and John McCain. With a preference to be himself instead of playing stereotypical Asian characters, he eventually found his voice by making sketches about himself. These sketches propelled his popularity as a cast in the show, making him one of the fan favorites. One of his most popular sketches is him starring as himself in a segment entitled 24 with Bobby Lee, which was essentially a parody of the famous 2001 thriller TV show 24. Bobby's family members also appeared as guests in the show, especially his younger brother Steve, who has also played a few non-speaking roles in sketches featuring Kim Jong-il and Tank. Comedy style: Bobby Lee is known for his rowdy and lowbrow humor. His Asian parodies were memorable, but the sketches where he is unapologetically himself is where he shines. I'm really excited tonight because I don't have to play a woman in any scene. But unfortunately, I still have to play Asian because of the eyes, as he seems to be self-aware, dangling the punchline to the unsuspecting audience. He tells jokes while highlighting ethnic issues, making fun of how Asian entertainers can only play Asian roles in Western pop culture. Post Mad TV. When Mad TV was cancelled in 2009, Bobby worked on different projects, appearing in various TV shows and comedy films like Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle, Kickin' It Old School, and Pineapple Express. In Kickin' It Old School, he'd expressed his inability to break dance despite his background in high school, hiring a body double instead. He's also starred as Mr. Lau, the Chinese man and the dictator. He's also done voice acting, with his most notable role being Dr. Andre in the Netflix animation series Inside Job. He has also voice acted on an educational children's animated series called Nature Cat as MC Ferret. In 2015, Bobby started a podcast called Tiger Belly with his then-girlfriend turned best friend, Kala Lakoon, an Asian American TV personality with producer George Kimmel and technical engineer Gilbert Gallon. Self-described as a no-holds-barred arena for half-truths and social no-nos, the podcast's topic spans various subjects in Western pop culture, politics, ethnicity, and racism, specifically Asian American issues related to the entertainment industry. They also talk about events from their personal lives and outside the country travels. Lee has also guest starred in music videos like We Made You by Eminem as Sulu and Two Different Tears by South Korean girl group Wonder Girls. He's also dabbled in music production, having written, produced, and performed Tiger Belly's intro song entitled Shadow Gook along with Kala. Currently, he is a recurring cast in the American comedy drama TV show, And Just Like That, a revival of the popular TV show Sex and the City with the role of Jackie Nee.